Ah, Revenant. I love this guy, and what I love about him is there's actually so many ways to build Revenant and so many different cards you can use. And in the build, I'll give you guys my build that I use, but also I'll give you some suggestions on other builds and cards, because Revenant at the end of the day can be played in many ways and can still be a great hero even with very different builds. You saw in my previous 2 Revenant gameplay videos that I used a full ability damage build and a full 100% crit build, and both did extremely well. The advantages of a full ability damage build is that you snowball very quickly. You're powerful in the early to mid stages, but you do drop off towards the late game. Whether this is an issue with games frequently ending before 60 CP, I'm not so sure. Alternatively, the crit build takes a while to get going. You're strong, sure, but until you get your crit bonus, you aren't hitting as hard as you should be. Late game, you're a monster, and with Prime, you're hitting for 700 every single shot, and your Q is still doing around 600 damage. An ADC at 60 CP and level 15 has around 1.3-1.4k health. So you can see, with one shot and a full Q, they're dead, or even with 2 shots, which is pretty insane. For example, this Revenant here is just over half health. I use my E and Q and he's dead. I pop my ultimate for style points, but you can see just how strong Revenant is, and I didn't even have to aim. I'll go over my ability build and then my 100% crit build, and following that, some cards that you could include to adapt to your playstyle. The ability build starts off like this. We have our Arc Magus and a health potion, followed by 2 identical Madstone gems with 3 minor casted each. A dummy ward because they're pretty useful at avoiding early game ganks. I like Assassin's Ward, and some people asked why I don't use Sorcerer Ward. It's because I prefer having 4 points of basic pen, simple as that, and we get enough ability pen from our meltdowns. I have a lesser drain and 2 drains in this ward. Now prepare yourselves. We have 6 meltdowns. The first meltdown has 2 major casts and a shock. The second meltdown has 2 major casts and a major shock or dire shock. We then have 2 identical meltdowns with 3 minor casts, followed by another 2 identical meltdowns with 2 major casts and a major or dire shock. Our final card is Blink Shot because, well damn, you'll probably need it, and it makes for some great plays. The 100% crit build is actually viable. Try it yourself if you don't believe me. We start with an Arc Magus and a health potion, followed by 2 Madstone gems with 3 minor casts. Next we have a Guardian's Ward. Now this isn't a dummy ward, keep this as you might need it throughout the game. We have 2 identical impact hammers with 2 major wounds and a major cast, followed by a micro nuke with 2 casts and a wound. Our next micro nuke has 2 major casts and a major wound, and our 2 cheap micro nukes have 3 minor casts and 2 minor casts and a wound. Blink Shot is a must here, but it's not in the final build, but adapt the build if you find you need it throughout the entire game. Finally, our Hunger Maul for that crit bonus with 3 lesser drains. I mentioned before that Revenant can be built in many different ways. A lot of top players actually favour building their carries in general with 100% crit because there's no RNG in landing a critical strike, but there's a lot of other cards you can use in various other builds. Necrovale is a great card for Revenant. The passive ability says on player kill, enter the shadow plane for 3 seconds. So with your Q being incredibly powerful, you can dive the enemy, use your Q and reposition with Necrovale. Or you can isolate a target in the Nether Realm, killing him and returning to Monolith while in the shadow plane. Stinger Boost is a fantastic card as well. The passive ability says on ability cast, gain bonus ability damage on your next basic attack equal to 50 plus 20% of your power, which with the ability damage build I gave you is pretty strong, and the fact that Revenant's reload ability activates Stinger Boost, this is going to increase your damage output. Essentially, you have bonus damage on your first shot and 4th shot, and if you want even more damage, you can combine that with your E or Scar, and if you want even more damage, check the frame cancelling out later in the video. In general, whenever you engage an enemy hero, you want to be placing a Scar on them first, and then using your abilities or your basic attacks. That's just something you should be doing in general, regardless of whether you're using Stinger Boost or not. Covering both build orders would be a bit boring for you guys, so I've left 2 links in the description below which have the build orders in an easy to follow format. Revenant might seem like an OP hero, and regardless of how you feel, just remember that in every game you've seen, there's another Revenant on either team that isn't doing so well. And why is that? Revenant is different to any other ranged carry we have in Paragon. He's less mobile, with decisions constantly having to be made because of his 4 shots in each round. Unlike Sparrow, who relies heavily on positional play, Revenant has an ultimate that gives him an opportunity to isolate targets as well as reposition. Revenant's ultimate offers the chance to snowball significantly, so using it to reposition is often hindering you more than it benefits you. And I'm not saying don't use it to escape if you really need to, but ideally you want to be using the ultimate to get that bonus CP rather than fleeing the scene. A key part about Revenant's ultimate is that you do not have to land the killing blow on an enemy to receive the bonus CP, which makes ulting a low health hero completely worth it. Of course, it's better if you're picking up the kills yourself, but your ultimate isn't wasted if you didn't secure the kill. As long as someone on your team did, you can always receive value for it. And that's my point. Using it to reposition doesn't necessarily net you value in the long run. If you can position well, you can use your ultimate exclusively for getting insane amounts of CP. And you shouldn't just ult low heroes, you should ult high value targets, but if it's a 5v1 and the enemy hero is gonna die anyways, you might as well ult for the bonus CP. What heroes should you ult then? Well, it depends on not only your team composition but the enemy team's composition. If your team relies heavily on, say, an Aurora ultimate, then maybe isolating the Decker from her allies is a great idea, letting your Aurora get off her ultimate without a purity to cleanse it. Alternatively, I've been in games where the enemy team would constantly use a Decker and Gadget ultimate in teamfights, so I tried to isolate one of them to avoid the wombo combo and end up appearing humiliated on my own top 5 plays. Ulting the enemy carry is another option. Remember that he can only see you while your entire team can see him, so he's likely going to take a lot of damage, but it could result in you also taking a lot of damage if he's ahead of you. You could just be setting yourself up for failure. But if you're confident in your abilities or the situation is in your favor, taking out the enemy carry is always a positive. While there's not a clear-cut answer as to who you should ult because it almost always varies depending on the situation, there is one enemy I will always try to ult, and that's an enemy with a bounty, one that has a kill streak, because they award you with bonus CP. Just be careful, because if they have a kill streak and are ahead, you don't want to be ulting them only to die. Revenant is great at zoning in the safe lane. He is a nightmare for any offlaner to deal with, and offlane players will get exposed incredibly fast. If your support has any form of CC, all it really takes is one stun and you can find yourself or your team a kill up almost instantly. Revenant makes it hard for the offlaner to push forward and secure farm, both CP and XP, and unlike other heroes in the safe lane where you usually keep the majority of your focus on the wave, with Revenant there's the possibility to burst down the enemy offlaner, and so keeping an eye on them is always beneficial. Just remember to use wards, or at least get your support to ward for you, because you have no escape. How should you position with Revenant? Well, it's a tricky one, because you have to be within range to shoot and use your abilities, and while his Q does have a really long range, his ultimate and E do not. You also need to make sure that you're positioning in such a way that the minions aren't going to be soaking up most of your obliterate damage when you want to hit a hero. I like to stick close to my support and just behind my front line. If I'm ahead, I'll play a bit more aggressively, but constantly keeping my distance from dangerous melee heroes like Several, Grux, Chimera, because at the end of the day, you don't really have an escape, and like I mentioned, you don't want to use your ultimate because of bad positioning. It's one of the reasons why I recommend you have a blink in your deck, because you can't always position perfectly. If a decker cages you, for example, at least you can blink out. This next tip is probably for the more advanced players, and if you're still getting used to the mechanics of Revenant, then this one can be overlooked, but it's not going to make a big difference at lower levels of play, but at the highest ones it might. Revenant, like a lot of other heroes, most noticeably Crunch, benefits from what is known as frame cancelling. Frame cancelling allows you to cancel the current frame animation of your hero and begin a new one. In Revenant's case, when he fires his 4th shot, you can cancel the last part of the animation after the shot. So basically, you can cancel the recoil and begin reloading. If you do not frame cancel, which would be to just let Revenant reload after finishing the recoil of the gunshot, then you'll be shooting a lot slower, as you can see here. Both videos are starting at the same frame, but watch as the Revenant on the right finishes 3 rounds of shots, so 12 bullets a second and a half quicker than the Revenant that doesn't frame cancel. A second and a half quicker might not seem much, but you have to remember the Revenant fires 2 shots every second, so a second and a half quicker is 3 shots more, and the longer this continues, the further away you will get. How do you frame cancel with Revenant then? It's incredibly simple. When you fire your 4th shot, you hit your right mouse button and you'll cancel the frame. The quicker you hit it, the faster you'll be able to fire your next round. That was a lot to take in, so here's 3 of my most useful tips you have to know for Revenant before I leave you. Firstly, while reloading, you can use abilities. This is a great time to hit your obliterate. Secondly, using your scar followed by your obliterate or basic attack will increase your damage output to that hero, so do it. Thirdly, focus on positioning, so that you're not wasting your ultimate escaping. Use it to get bonus CP and get ahead. I hope you enjoyed this video. Smash that thumbs up button if you did. Stay subscribed for all the latest Paragon content, and until next time guys, peace.